Hello, this is Barb Bierman, Provincial Spokesperson for Parents for Educational Choice. As a person who has the privilege of speaking up publicly for parents who send their children to independent schools in Ontario, I've heard a lot of stories about the reasons parents make these school choices and the sacrifices they make to finance those school choices. I'm also a parent who sends their own children to a faith-based independent school in this province, and like you, I have had to wade through the intense media firestorm that resulted from an election promise to extend funding to all faith-based schools in Ontario. Although public light has been shed on a Canadian human rights violation that exists due to Ontario's practice of funding Catholic education and no other faith-based schools, the United Nations ruling against our country, the continuation of the status quo in education, seems to be a situation that many people, including our Premier, are content to live with. Today, you have likely heard that PC leader John Tory has clarified the process on including faith-based schools in the definition of public education. If he is elected on October 10, there will be a free vote in the legislature on the issue of faith-based school funding. This will not be a whipped vote, meaning that MPPs will be free to vote individually or for their constituencies rather than vote on party lines. While some of you may be concerned and see this as backpedaling or 11th-hour election-winning strategy, this doesn't really change anything for parents and supporters of faith-based schools. In order to have any further discussions on how and when public funding could be extended to faith-based schools, the party proposing the idea must be elected. This is crucial for any further discussions. Some supporters have expressed doubt over whether the funding is good for faith-based schools. Others don't think politicians can be trusted with any of these ideas. And none of that matters unless the party that is promising the policy gets the opportunity to form a government. John Tory's statement means that there will be further stages of activity for parents. First, parents and supporters who believe this is one of the most important election issues on the table have to vote this party in on October 10. Secondly, parents and supporters will have to regularly communicate the importance of this issue to their local PC MPP in order to influence their free vote in a manner that is positive when it arises in the legislature. Third, parents will have to express their opinions vigilantly to the proposed...
Sorry.
Okay.
We'll pick it up from third.
Third, parents...
Hold on. Well, I'm ready. And action.
Third, parents will have to express their opinions vigilantly to the proposed implementation commission that will be headed by Bill Davis. Finally, parents will have to make their voices heard in any public hearings and regulation meetings that result before the implementation of the policy happens. So nothing's really changed for parents. There is still just one party with the possibility to be elected and form a government which will include legislation to extend funding to faith-based schools. They need to be elected in order for any of these other activities to happen. If they aren't elected, it will be a very long time before any subsequent government will correct this injustice as part of a mandate. The support for this policy on the part of some parents and supporters in many places has been soft during this election campaign. Some parents have been confused about the policy and have shared with me that they are waiting to see what happens with it after the election before they throw their support behind it. As a fellow parent, I urge you in this. If you wait and see on the election, you will never get a chance to wait and see on the policy's implementation process. The proposed policy is clear. The Ontario PCs are proposing to give public funding and educational grants to faith-based schools that meet the following criteria. Schools that will meet provincial standards, schools that will appropriately address teacher accreditation, and schools that will use standardized testing and report publicly on the results of those tests. John Tory has been clear with me on several occasions. He knows what goes on in many of these schools is good. He knows that the accountability standards suggested in his policy are already happening in many of the schools because tuition-paying parents demand them. He is not looking to create more public schools through this funding. The implementation of this funding will strike a balance between guarding the unique identity and integrity of faith-based schools with the public accountability that is reasonably expected wherever public money is spent. Anything else that you may have heard speculated by the media or raised by the current Premier and Education Minister is just fear-mongering the public and sensationalizing something in what would otherwise be a fairly boring election campaign. There isn't a lot else that separates the major parties, and we have apparently caught the media's attention as the only interesting thing happening. So what should parents and supporters do? Stay vigilant and stay involved. John Tory is keeping this issue officially in the PC platform. His personal commitment to fairness and inclusion is unyielding, and he is to be respected for it. While many of us see the obvious injustice of the current system of education funding in Ontario, Putting the matter to a free vote in the legislature will also allow for the much-needed debate to clarify the value of this proposal to end injustice. For those of us parents and supporters who were involved in the process to implement the Equity in Education tax credit back in 2001, this should sound familiar. We fought hard to sway the public and political opinion on the notion of school choice then, and won, outside the parameters of an election campaign where extreme statements seem to get more attention than common sense and matters of justice so often. So continue to talk to your friends and neighbors about the need to correct injustice in a place like Ontario. Attend all candidate meetings and cheer loudly when someone speaks up for justice on the issue. And most importantly, get out and vote on October 10. Voting another party out of protest doesn't even get us the opportunity to get to the table and discuss the merits and methods of implementing public funding for faith-based schools. Not voting at all only allows others who don't yet see the injustice in this issue a greater voice than your own. So please take a good look around the PEC website and get valuable information on this issue. Share this video link with your friends and family and join me on October 10. Let's use our voices to make a big noise.